By the time Anna Whitfield learned she had been sold with the debt, the ink on her uncle's signature was already dry. Snow pressed against the windows of Whitfield House in pale, relentless sheets, softening the dead garden, the empty carriage path, and the iron gate that had once announced a family of modest dignity rather than quiet ruin. Inside the parlor, there was no fire large enough to warm the room. The coals glowed low beneath a marble mantel cracked at one corner, and the portraits of Anna's grandparents looked down through candle smoke as if ashamed to witness what their name had become. Mr. Harold Whitfield stood beside the writing desk with a folded agreement in one hand and a satisfaction so carefully hidden that only Anna, who had lived beneath his roof for 8 years, could see it. "It is settled," he said. "The household debt has been transferred to Duke Everett Frost of Frostmere Hall. His Grace has agreed not to pursue immediate foreclosure." Anna stood across from him in her plain dark dress, her hands folded at her waist because if she let them hang loose, he might see them tremble. "Transferred," she repeated. "That sounds almost merciful when said softly." Her aunt lowered her eyes from the settee, where she clutched a lace handkerchief that had never been used for anyone else's grief. Harold's mouth tightened. "Do not be ungrateful. Without this arrangement, Whitfield House would be seized by New Year's Day. And with it." He placed the agreement on the desk and smoothed the page with 2 fingers. "You will go to Frostmere Hall tomorrow. You will serve as personal collateral under the terms of the settlement until the Duke determines the balance satisfied." The words did not strike at once. They entered slowly, like cold water finding the seam of a boot. Personal collateral. Not daughter. Not niece. Not woman. A line in a ledger. A living signature placed beneath a debt she had not made. Anna looked toward her aunt, waiting for protest, for shame, for even the small mercy of discomfort. None came. Only silence, powdered and respectable. "You signed this for me," Anna said. Harold's eyes cooled. "I signed on behalf of the family. You signed away my life to protect your house. This house fed you. My father left money for my care. Your father left confusion, sentiment, and insufficient accounts." The old insult to the dead moved through Anna like a blade made of frost, but she did not raise her voice. That would have pleased him. Men like Harold Whitfield called a woman hysterical the moment truth became inconvenient at full volume. "What does Duke Frost believe I agreed to?" she asked. "He believes what the paper states." That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters in law. Outside, the wind moved snow against the window with a sound like sand across glass. Everyone in the county knew the name Frost. Duke Everett Frost was said to collect debts the way winter collected fields, completely, quietly, without apology. He did not attend balls. He did not forgive defaults. He lived in Frostmere Hall beyond the northern ridge, a white stone estate surrounded by pines and frozen lakes, where every account was balanced and every mercy itemized until it ceased to be mercy at all. Anna had never met him. Yet tomorrow, she would arrive at his door as something between a servant, a debtor, and an apology her family wanted someone else to manage. "If I refuse?" she asked. Harold smiled then, just a little. "Refusal is a luxury purchased by people without obligations." Anna looked at the agreement again. The blacking shone under candlelight, fresh and final. Her name appeared in a paragraph she had not written, tied to numbers, deadlines, and phrases meant to make cruelty appear civilized. For a moment, she saw herself as they had arranged her, packed into a carriage, delivered through snow, received by a stranger with colder hands than the season. Then she thought of her father's desk upstairs, of the small locked drawer Harold had never allowed her to open, of the letters her father had once kept tied with blue ribbon before illness took him, and every gentle thing in the house was sold, hidden, or renamed debt. She lifted her chin. "May I take my father's papers?" Harold's expression sharpened. "No papers leave this house." There, a crack in his polish. A small one, but real. Anna held the sight of it carefully. "Then may I take my own name?" Her aunt made a faint sound. Harold frowned. "Do not be dramatic." "I am not. I am asking whether I arrive at Frostmere Hall as Anna Whitfield, or only as the amount you owed." The room went still. Snow whitened the window behind him until Harold seemed almost a shadow cut from the old house. "At last," he said, "arrive however you like. The Duke will decide what you are worth." Anna felt the humiliation of that sentence land where he intended it, but she would not let it root there. Worth was not decided by creditors, uncles, or men who mistook signatures for souls. She crossed to the desk, picked up the agreement, and read her name once more, not as surrender, but as evidence. Then she set it down with great care. "Tomorrow, then," she said. "Tomorrow," Harold answered. That night, while Whitfield House slept under snow and betrayal, Anna lit a candle in her father's old room and searched the drawer he had forbidden others to touch. She found no money, no jewels, only a narrow gap behind the wood panel and, hidden inside it, the corner of an envelope sealed with faded blue wax. She did not break it. Not yet. She slipped it into the lining of her cloak with hands that no longer trembled. At dawn, the Frost Duke's carriage would come for a debt. But Anna Whitfield would carry a letter no one in that house had wanted her to find. The carriage arrived at Whitfield House before the sun had fully broken through the winter clouds. It came without bells, without liveried ceremony, without any sign that the man who owned it cared whether the household watched from behind curtains. For black horses stood steaming in the snow, their breath rising like pale smoke, while the driver waited beside the open door with the patient stillness of someone accustomed to collecting what others owed. Anna Whitfield came down the front steps with one small trunk, her father's old wool cloak drawn tight around her shoulders, and the sealed letter hidden in its lining where her hand could feel the faint ridge of blue wax. Her aunt kissed the air beside her cheek and murmured something about sacrifice. Harold Whitfield did not embrace her. He only adjusted his gloves and said, "Remember that obedience will make this easier." Anna looked at him through the falling snow. For whom? He did not answer. Men who sold other people's futures rarely enjoyed questions that counted the cost. The carriage door closed. Whitfield House receded behind the white blur of the morning, and with every turn of the wheels, Anna felt less like a niece being sent away and more like a document traveling toward its reader. The road to Frostmere Hall climbed north through pines stiff with ice, past frozen fields, narrow bridges, and stone walls half buried under drifts. Inside the carriage, everything was severe and expensive: dark leather seats, a foot warmer at her boots, wool blankets folded with military precision, and a small brass hook where a gentleman might hang a cane. No flowers, no cushion chosen for comfort, nothing unnecessary. Anna wondered if the Duke had arranged his whole life that way, stripped of softness so no one could accuse him of weakness. By noon, Frostmere Hall appeared beyond a line of black fir trees, rising from the white landscape like a fortress carved out of winter itself. Its walls were pale stone, its windows tall and narrow, its roof edged with snow. A frozen lake stretched behind it, flat and silver beneath the low sky. There were no ivy-covered romantic ruins, no welcoming smoke from cheerful chimneys, no disorder that suggested life spilling beyond rules. Frostmere did not look haunted. It looked audited by the cold. The door opened before Anna knocked. A woman in a dark gown stood within, gray-haired, straight-backed, and sharp-eyed, her keys hanging at her waist. "Miss Whitfield," she said. "I am Mrs. Eleanor Briggs." "Good afternoon." Anna's voice was steady, though her fingers ached from the cold. Mrs. Briggs looked briefly at the trunk, the thin cloak, the snow gathered on Anna's hem, and something unreadable passed through her face. "His Grace is waiting in the north study. Not resting, not receiving. Waiting." Anna followed her across a marble hall where every footstep returned with exact disapproval. Frostmere Hall smelled of cedar smoke, ink, and cold paper. Ledgers sat on a long table near the staircase. Brass lamps burned with clean, pale flames. Portraits of Frost ancestors watched from the walls, their painted faces possessing the same severe brow, the same inherited confidence of people who believed the world could be made orderly if everyone paid what they owed. The north study was larger than the parlor at Whitfield House, and far colder despite the fire. Duke Everett Frost stood behind a black oak desk, dressed in dark wool, his pale hair touched with silver at the temples, his face composed with such restraint that emotion seemed not absent but forbidden. Before him lay the agreement Harold had signed. Beside it sat a ledger, an inkwell, and a silver letter opener placed precisely parallel to the paper's edge. He did not rise when she entered. He did not need to. The room had already risen around him. "Miss Anna Whitfield," he said. "Yes, Your Grace. You understand why you are here. I understand what my uncle told me." His eyes lifted from the page to her face. They were not cruel eyes. That almost made them worse. Cruelty could be resisted. Cold fairness expected gratitude for not being worse. The Whitfield household debt has been transferred to Frostmere under agreed terms. Your presence here is collateral against default, and your labor may be applied toward reduction of the balance. My labor, Anna said. My conduct. My time. My future. All itemized, I assume. Mrs. Briggs, standing near the door, lowered her gaze. Duke Frost studied Anna more carefully. You speak as if the debt is not real. I speak as if I did not create it. Few debts are created by those who suffer them most. The answer was too honest to dismiss. Anna felt a flicker of surprise, but she buried it quickly. Everett turned a page. You will be housed in the East Room near the Records Library. You will assist with cataloging household documents, copying accounts, and sorting correspondence under Mrs. Briggs's supervision. You will not leave Frostmere grounds without permission until the settlement is reviewed. Reviewed by whom? By me. Then you are creditor, judge, and jailer. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut paper. Mrs. Briggs looked toward the fire. Duke Frost closed the ledger with quiet precision. You are not imprisoned, Miss Whitfield. May I leave today? No. Then we disagree on vocabulary. For the first time, his expression changed, though only at the edges. Not anger. Interest, perhaps, or irritation made thoughtful. Do you intend to make defiance your first payment? No, Your Grace. I intend to know the name of the thing I am being asked to endure. Everett stood then, tall and still, the firelight making no warmth of him. Very well. You are here because your family failed to honor its obligations. Anna held his gaze. Then let me work under my own name, not under theirs. The request seemed to move through the room more deeply than she expected. Mrs. Briggs looked at her fully now. Duke Frost said nothing for several breaths. Outside, snow pressed against the window in pale silence. At last, he inclined his head. Anna Whitfield, then. Not Harold's niece. Not Whitfield collateral. Anna Whitfield. Her throat tightened before she could stop it. He had granted nothing, not really. No freedom. No mercy. Only a name. Yet in a house built from ledgers, even a name could be a lantern. Thank you, she said. Do not thank me yet. He returned to the agreement. Frostmere is not softened by tears. Good, Anna replied quietly. I did not bring any for your use. Mrs. Briggs nearly looked up too quickly. Duke Frost paused, then marked a line in the ledger. We shall see what you did bring. Anna's hand brushed the hidden letter inside her cloak, feeling the blue wax beneath the fabric. She did not know what her father had sealed there. She only knew Harold had feared his papers leaving Whitfield House. And as Duke Everett Frost wrote her name into his ledger, Anna understood that Frostmere Hall had expected a debt to arrive. Instead, it had received a question waiting to be opened. Anna Whitfield's first night at Frostmere Hall passed inside a room, so neat it seemed to have been prepared by a ruler rather than hands. The East Room near the Records Library held a narrow bed, a writing desk, a porcelain washbasin, and one window overlooking the frozen lake behind the house. Mrs. Briggs had sent up a wool blanket, a tray of soup, and a small coal fire that burned with disciplined reluctance. No one locked the door. Anna noticed that first. She also noticed the footman stationed at the end of the hall, pretending to adjust the lamps each time she opened it. Freedom at Frostmere, she was learning, had witnesses. She did not break the blue wax seal that night. The letter remained hidden in her cloak, folded near her heart like a second pulse. It was not fear that stopped her, though fear had traveled with her from Whitfield House. It was caution. Her father's papers had been forbidden. Harold had sharpened at the mention of them. If the letter mattered, she needed to know where she stood before she opened it in a house ruled by the man who now held her debt. At dawn, Mrs. Briggs brought her to the Records Library, a long northern room lined from floor to ceiling with cabinets, ledgers, and labeled boxes tied in white tape. Frostmere kept its past as carefully as other houses kept silver. Duke Everett Frost was already there, standing at a tall desk with a ledger open before him. You will begin with correspondence from the Whitfield account, he said. Sort by date. Copy totals. Flag inconsistencies. Anna removed her gloves and sat where Mrs. Briggs indicated. You expect inconsistencies? I expect people to disappoint paper. Paper disappoints people too, Your Grace. It often survives lies better than the people named in them. His pen paused, but he did not look up. Then you should find the work agreeable. It was not agreeable. It was exacting, cold, and humiliating in its intimacy. Anna read through invoices for coal her family had not paid, medical bills from her father's final winter, household repairs delayed until rot became visible, interest added like frost thickening over glass. Her uncle's name appeared often, her own almost never, until the final agreement. She became visible in the account only when she became useful as payment. Everett watched without seeming to watch. He had expected tears by the second hour, anger by the third, perhaps some attempt to explain away the numbers or throw blame like a shawl over her shoulders. Anna did none of it. She sharpened pencils. She copied dates. She asked for clarification when terms were unclear. When she found a mathematical error against the Frost estate, she marked it in red and set it aside. This subtracts $18 from your side incorrectly, she said. Everett looked at the page. You would correct an error that favors you? It does not favor me. It makes the page false. Mrs. Briggs, arranging folders near the cabinet, glanced toward the Duke as if the room itself had shifted by an inch. Everett took the paper. Most debtors are less devoted to accuracy. Anna dipped her pen. Most creditors use that sentence to excuse distrusting everyone. He looked at her then. The morning light from the frozen lake cut across his face, pale and sharp, making him seem carved from the same winter that guarded the house. You dislike me. I do not know you well enough for dislike. That has not stopped many people. Then many people are careless. Her voice remained level. No flirtation. No pleading. No softness arranged for advantage. Everett found himself irritated by the dignity of it. Coldness had served him well because most people responded to it predictably. They either bent, trembled, or tried to charm him warm. Anna Whitfield did none of those things. She made his rules stand in the room beside her and reveal their own severity. At noon, a young maid entered carrying bread, cheese, and tea. Her hands shook slightly when setting down the tray, and one spoon slipped to the carpet. Before the girl could panic, Anna bent, picked it up, and placed it on the tray. No harm done. The maid whispered, "Thank you, miss. Bring a clean one when you can." Mrs. Briggs saw the exchange. Everett did too. The girl left less frightened than she had entered. It was a small thing, but Frostmere Hall was a house built to measure small things. In the afternoon, Anna found 3 letters from her father's final year, all addressed to Harold, all answered by the same phrase in her uncle's hand: insufficient funds. The sight made her throat tighten, but she did not stop working. Only when her fingers brushed the hidden lining of her cloak, hanging on the chair behind her, did she remember the blue-waxed letter waiting there. Her father had left one more page. One Harold had not read, or had feared too much to destroy. "Miss Whitfield," Everett said. She looked up. "You have been holding the same account for several minutes." Anna returned to herself. "Forgive me. You need not apologize for thinking, only for concealing relevant information." Her hand went still. "Is that a rule?" "It is a principle." "Then I hope Frostmere applies it to creditors as thoroughly as to debtors." A silence passed between them, colder than the window panes. Everett closed the ledger. "You may end for the day. The file is not complete. Neither are you." The words were not gentle, but they were not unkind. That almost troubled her. Anna gathered the papers, stacked them squarely, and stood. As she reached for her cloak, the envelope slipped from the lining and fell soundlessly onto the floor between them. Blue wax flashed against the dark rug. Everett's gaze dropped to it. Anna froze. For the first time since arriving at Frostmere Hall, she looked afraid. Not of punishment. Of losing the one thing that had not yet been taken from her. Everett saw the change and did not reach for the letter. "That belongs to you," he said. Anna bent quickly and picked it up. Her fingers closed around the seal. "Yes." "Then keep it safe." She looked at him, searching for the trap. There was none that she could see. Only a duke standing behind a desk, still cold, still powerful, but for one moment choosing not to take what he could have demanded. Anna curtsied and left with the letter pressed beneath her palm. That night, alone in the East Room, she set the envelope on the writing desk. The blue wax bore not the Whitfield crest, but a mark she did not recognize. A small frost flower pressed into the seal. Her breath slowed. The letter had not merely been hidden from Harold. It had been meant for someone at Frostmere. And whatever truth lay inside it, Anna now understood that the debt binding her to the Frost Duke had begun long before her uncle's signature dried. The fourth morning at Frostmere Hall began with snowlight instead of sunlight, the pale kind that entered a room without warmth and made every object look as if it had been cut from bone. Anna Whitfield sat at the small writing desk in the east room with the blue waxed letter before her, unopened still, though she had not slept more than an hour. The seal showed a frost flower pressed deep into the wax, a mark too deliberate to be decorative, too foreign to belong to Whitfield House. She had turned it over again and again by candlelight, searching the paper for some clue her father might have left on the outside. Nothing. Only her name, written in his hand with a steadiness that made grief rise like a tide. Anna, if ever the debt comes for you. That was all the outer fold said. Not if misfortune comes. Not if Harold lies. If the debt comes. As though her father had known that one day numbers would be dressed as fate and sent to collect his daughter. She hid the letter inside her bodice lining before Mrs. Briggs arrived with breakfast, then followed the housekeeper back to the records library, where the air smelled of ink, coal smoke, and paper that had outlived too many human excuses. Duke Everett Frost was already standing at the high desk, reviewing the Whitfield files with his sleeves buttoned precisely, his silver pale hair catching the cold light from the window. He looked up only when Anna entered. "You are tired," he said. "That is not an account entry." "No, but it affects accuracy." "Then I will be accurate enough for both of us." Mrs. Briggs paused by the cabinet, and Anna regretted the sharpness the moment it left her. But Everett did not rebuke her. He only watched her with that infuriating stillness that made silence feel like a ledger waiting to be balanced. "Begin with the household expense summaries," he said. "If you find contradictions, mark them." Anna sat and worked. Hour after hour, she copied numbers from Harold's reports into Frostmere's ledgers, and the more she wrote, the more the story changed shape. Whitfield House had not been merely poor. It had been drained. Payments marked for repairs never reached builders. Funds meant for her father's medical care were listed as household improvements. Jewelry sold after his death appeared in the accounts as emergency provisions, though Anna remembered eating broth for 3 weeks that winter. Harold's hand was everywhere, smooth, legal, respectable, turning theft into necessity by writing it in proper columns. At noon, the young maid brought a tray and nearly dropped the cup when Everett asked her name. "Lucy, Your Grace." "Lucy," he said, as if placing it carefully into memory. "The tea is well made." The girl blinked as though praise from the Frost Duke might be a form of weather she had not dressed for. "Thank you, Your Grace." After she left, Anna looked at him over the ledger. "Do you always frighten maids by being civil?" "Only when correcting an oversight." "Yours?" "Frostmere's." The answer should have sounded evasive, yet it did not. It sounded like a man learning that houses had habits their masters could no longer pretend were invisible. Mrs. Briggs, arranging papers nearby, allowed herself the faintest approving glance before returning to her keys. By late afternoon, Anna's fingers had gone stiff from copying. She flexed them beneath the table, hoping no one saw, but Everett did. "You may rest." "I am not finished." "That is not the same as not needing rest." "Your Grace, if I leave every page half done, the debt will last forever." A debt made endless by exhaustion is not repayment. It is vanity in the creditor. Anna looked up. There was no softness in his face, but there was something more dangerous to her composure. Fairness turning against itself. "You speak as though you are not the creditor. Today I am beginning to suspect I was handed the wrong title." The words settled into the library slowly. Anna's hand moved toward the hidden letter before she could stop it. Everett saw the motion, but again he did not demand. That restraint, repeated too often to be accidental, began to press against her defenses more than cruelty would have. Cruelty kept the world simple. Restraint asked her to reconsider. Mrs. Briggs excused herself to fetch another file, leaving them alone with the frozen windows and the low fire. Everett closed the ledger. "Your uncle's summaries do not agree with the source accounts." Anna gave a small, humorless breath. "My uncle's kindness never agreed with his words either." "Did your father know?" She looked down at the page. "My father knew Harold was careless. He did not live long enough to know he was cruel." "And you?" "I was a girl. Then I was a burden." "Burdens are told what they cost, not what is stolen from them." Everett's eyes lowered to the accounts as if the numbers had become less orderly under her voice. "Miss Whitfield." "Anna," she said, surprising herself. His gaze returned to her. She swallowed. You wrote my name into your ledger. Use it when you are about to speak to the person rather than the account. For the first time, the Frost Duke looked almost wounded by correction. Not offended. Wounded. Anna, he said. The name sounded strange in his voice, careful and unadorned. The paper your uncle signed may not survive review. Her breath caught. You mean the debt? I mean the terms that brought you here. For a moment, the library seemed to tilt toward the fire. Freedom had been so far away that she had stopped imagining its shape. And until then, you remain under Frostmere's roof by protection, not claim. Anna wanted to believe him. The wanting itself frightened her. Men with power could turn protection into possession between one sentence and the next. She stood too quickly, and the hidden envelope shifted beneath her bodice lining. The edge slipped free and fell onto the desk between them, blue wax facing upward. Everett looked at it, then at her. That is the letter from yesterday. Anna placed her hand over it. Yes. You have not opened it. No, why? The question held no command, but it reached the most guarded part of her. She thought of her father's handwriting, Harold's fear, the Frostflower seal, and the strange fact that this cold man had twice refused to take what he could have seized. Because once I read it, she said, I may lose the last version of my father that no one has corrected. Everett's expression changed, so subtly another person might have missed it. Mrs. Briggs returned then, stopping just inside the door when she saw the envelope. Her eyes moved to the seal, and the color left her face. Where did you get that? Anna turned. You know this mark? Mrs. Briggs set the file down with unusual care. That is the private seal of the late Duchess Frost. His Grace's mother. The room went utterly still. Everett reached for nothing. He only stared at the blue wax as if a dead voice had suddenly spoken from the table. Anna lifted the letter slowly, feeling its weight change in her hand. It was no longer merely her father's secret. It belonged to Frostmere too, and whatever it contained had been waiting between their families like a debt no ledger had dared to name. The blue seal of the late Duchess Frost changed the room more than any raised voice could have done. Mrs. Briggs stood beside the cabinet with one hand resting against the edge of the shelf, as if the old wood alone kept her steady. Duke Everett Frost did not move from behind the desk. His face remained composed, but the stillness had become dangerous in a different way, not coldness now, but the shock of a man hearing footsteps in a corridor he believed long sealed. Anna Whitfield held the envelope between both hands and felt, for the first time since leaving Whitfield House, that the letter might be too heavy for her alone. Your mother sealed this? She asked. Everett's eyes remained on the faded blue wax. My mother used that mark only for private family correspondence. Then why would my father have it? Mrs. Briggs answered before he could. Because your father once came to Frostmere Hall as a guest, not a debtor. Anna looked at her. The housekeeper's face had softened with memory, though discipline still held her upright. Thomas Whitfield was a friend to the late Duke and Duchess. A quiet gentleman, too generous for the men who later managed his affairs. The name of Anna's father, spoken with respect inside Frostmere Hall, struck harder than any accusation. At Whitfield House, Harold had turned Thomas Whitfield into a warning. Sentimental, impractical, weak with money, foolish with trust. Here, beneath shelves of ledgers and the seal of a dead duchess, he became a man with a history Anna had never been allowed to inherit. Why was I never told? She whispered. Everett looked toward Mrs. Briggs, and the housekeeper lowered her gaze. After the late Duke and Duchess died, the old correspondence was divided. Some went to the North Archive. Some was sent to family solicitors. His Grace was very young when the estate changed hands. Young enough to be taught accounts before memories, Everett said. The sentence held no self-pity, only fact, and perhaps regret. Anna looked down at the seal. It is addressed to me. Then it is yours to open, Everett said. Not mine. That answer, so immediate and restrained, made Mrs. Briggs glance at him with quiet approval. Anna sat because her knees had begun to feel uncertain. She broke the blue wax carefully, not tearing the paper more than necessary. Inside was a letter folded around a second, older sheet. The outer letter was in her father's hand. My dearest Anna, if this reaches you only after I am gone, forgive me for leaving truth to paper when I should have given it to you while my voice was still strong. Years ago, when Frostmere Hall nearly fell under a private banking failure, I placed a portion of your mother's inheritance at the disposal of the late Duke Frost. He intended repayment at once, but your mother and I refused interest, believing friendship and honor stronger than contracts. The Duchess insisted on sealing the enclosed acknowledgment for your protection, should our own family ever forget what was owed. If Harold speaks of debt, ask first who taught him the word. Anna stopped reading. The ink blurred, but she did not let tears fall. Not yet. Everett had gone pale. Mrs. Briggs closed her eyes briefly, as if a suspicion long buried had finally been given a name. Anna unfolded the second sheet. The handwriting changed, elegant and firm. I, Eleanor Frost, Duchess of Frostmere, witness that Thomas Whitfield extended $10,000 in private relief to preserve Frostmere lands, staff wages, and winter provisions during the banking panic. This sum was accepted as a debt of honor by the Frost family and shall remain acknowledged should formal ledgers fail to preserve it. Signed and sealed under my hand. $10,000. The number seemed impossible in the frozen room. Larger than the debt Harold claimed. Larger than the agreement that had carried Anna here. Larger than the life she had been told she owed. Everett reached for the desk edge, not to take the letter, but as if the floor beneath him had shifted. Mrs. Briggs, he said, voice low, bring the North Archive keys. Yes, Your Grace. The housekeeper moved at once, but Anna could not look away from the page. My father saved this house. Everett did not answer quickly. When he did, the words sounded as though they cost him something vital. Yes. And your house accepted me as collateral. Yes. You accepted me. The room went silent. Outside, snow slid from a branch and fell softly against the window ledge. Everett's eyes lifted to hers. He did not hide behind legal phrasing. He did not say he had acted according to the papers. He did not remind her that Harold had lied first. I did. Anna folded the letter slowly, each crease an effort to keep herself from shaking. Then the debt was never mine. No, it was yours. Everett bowed his head, not like a duke granting acknowledgement, but like a man receiving judgment. Yes. Mrs. Briggs returned with the keys, but stopped at the threshold when she saw him standing that way. Anna rose from the chair with the letters in her hand. For 4 days, Frostmere Hall had measured her, watched her, contained her under terms written by men. Now the paper had turned in her palm and faced them all. I would like to see the North Archive, she said. Her voice was quiet, but the room answered it as command. Everett stepped aside from the desk. You shall. The archive lay behind a narrow door of dark wood at the end of the records library. Mrs. Briggs unlocked it with a key that had not turned smoothly in years. Dust and cold air breathed out. Inside, boxes lined the shelves by family name, year, and estate matter. Frost. Whitfield. Banking panic. Private relief. Everett lifted one box down and placed it on the table before Anna without opening it himself. She did. Inside were copied notes, bank receipts, and a final letter from the late Duke Frost thanking Thomas Whitfield for preventing staff dismissals during the winter of failure. Anna touched the paper as if touching her father's hand across time. All her life, she had been told he left weakness behind. In truth, he had left mercy, and other people had spent it without saying his name. Everett read enough to understand the full shape of his disgrace. His family had not been wronged by the Whitfields. It had survived because of them. And he, the man called Frost for never bending, had allowed a brave man's daughter to be brought under his roof as payment. Your Grace, Mrs. Briggs said softly, shall I send for the solicitor? Everett's gaze remained on Anna. Immediately, Anna closed the archive box. And my uncle? The cold returned to Everett's face then, but it was no longer aimed at her. It had become clean, purposeful, protective without claiming ownership. Harold Whitfield will be invited to Frostmere at dawn, he said. He will bring every paper he used to sell what was never his. Anna held the blue-sealed letter against her chest. The anger came then, not loud, not wild, but bright enough to warm the coldest room in Frostmere. Do not invite him for my sake. Everett looked at her. Then for whose? For my father's. The answer settled over the ledgers, the snow, the old debts, and the living ones. Everett inclined his head. For your father's, then? And in that moment, Anna saw the first crack in the Frost Duke's winter, not because he had softened, but because he had finally learned which side of the cold deserved his strength. That night, Frostmere Hall did not sleep so much as keep watch. Snow gathered along the window ledges. The lake behind the house lay hard, and pale beneath moonlight, and every candle in the records library seemed to burn with a straighter flame after the blue-sealed letter had been read. Anna Whitfield remained in the North Archive long after Mrs. Briggs asked whether she wished to rest. Rest belonged to people whose lives had not been rewritten by the handwriting of the dead. She sat at the long table with her father's letter open before her, the Duchess's acknowledgment beside it, and the old frost receipts arranged in careful rows. $10,000. Winter provisions. Staff wages. Land preserved. No interest demanded. No public boast made. Her father had not been foolish with money as Harold claimed. He had been generous in a world that preferred generosity only when it came with a profit. The knowledge did not heal her at once. It made the wound cleaner, which was not the same as making it smaller. Duke Everett Frost stood near the shelves, reviewing a second file Mrs. Briggs had found under estate correspondence from the banking panic. He had not taken the chair at the head of the table. He had not taken the letters from Anna unless she placed them before him. Every restraint now felt deliberate, and she hated that she noticed. He had been her creditor 4 days ago. He had written her name into a ledger because another man brought her to him as collateral. He could not become honorable merely because the truth had embarrassed him. Yet he had not turned away from that embarrassment. That, too, she noticed. Here, Everett said at last, setting one paper near the edge of the table without pushing it toward her. A note from my father's steward. It confirms the transfer was kept outside the formal debt books because your father refused legal claim against Frostmere. Anna looked at the page. He trusted honor. Yes. Everett's voice was flat with condemnation, though not of her father. And honor, left undocumented, became convenient for men without it. Mrs. Briggs stood by the fire, keys in hand, her stern face softened by the grief of memory. Your father visited twice after the late Duchess's illness began. He brought books for the library and peppermint candy for the kitchen children. I remember because he gave one to a scullery boy who had been crying over a burn. Anna closed her eyes. That sounded like him. Not a grand act large enough for portraits, but a small mercy offered where no one important would record it. Harold said he wasted money because he liked being admired. Harold Whitfield mistook kindness for vanity because he could not imagine doing good without an audience, Everett said. Anna opened her eyes and looked at him. And you? The question struck the room with quiet force. Mrs. Briggs looked down at her keys. Everett did not answer quickly. Outside, wind pressed snow against the glass. I mistook law for justice because law was easier to read. It was not an excuse. That was why it hurt. Anna folded the steward's note and placed it beside the others. Then tomorrow you will read him correctly. Tomorrow I will bring him to account. No, Anna said. Tomorrow I will bring him to account. You may stand there with your title, your solicitor, your ledgers, and your cold voice. But he sold me. He used my father's name. He made my life into an entry on a page. I will not stand behind you while you rescue me from a lie I have survived longer than you have understood. Mrs. Briggs became very still. Everett looked at Anna as if the frost in him had met something stronger than flame. Dignity refusing both pity and protection. Then you will speak first, he said. Anna had expected resistance. The absence of it unsettled her more. And you will not interrupt. No, even if I tremble. Especially then. The words entered her carefully, like warmth held at a distance, so it would not frighten. She looked away first. Later, after Mrs. Briggs took the copies to prepare for the solicitor, Anna remained alone in the archive doorway. Everett had stepped into the records library, but he had not gone far. Your Grace, she said. He turned. Anna. The use of her name was quieter now, less like correction, more like care restrained by conscience. When my uncle arrives, he will say I misunderstood. He will say my father was weak. He will say I owe the family gratitude. I know. He will try to make me feel like a child again. Everett's expression darkened, but his voice stayed measured. Then Frostmere will remember you are a woman with the right to be believed. She looked at the shelves around them, at the boxes that had slept for years with truth inside. Houses remember only what their masters allow. Then this house will be allowed to remember differently. It was the first promise he had made that did not sound like a contract. Dawn came gray and blue over Frostmere, spreading slowly across the frozen lake. Harold Whitfield's carriage arrived just as the solicitor's sleigh stopped at the front steps. Anna stood in the north study wearing the same plain dark dress in which she had arrived, her father's letter in one hand and the Duchess's acknowledgement in the other. Everett stood several paces behind her, not at the desk, not between her and the door, but where she had asked him to stand, visible, silent, and ready. Mrs. Briggs waited beside the ledger table. The solicitor arranged his papers. When Harold entered, his eyes went first to Everett, then to Anna, and annoyance flashed across his face when he saw she had not been diminished by Frostmere's walls. "Anna," he said, with the false patience of a man smoothing a chain, "I hope you have behaved sensibly." Anna felt the old fear rise. Then she felt the paper beneath her fingers. Her father's hand, the Duchess's seal, her own name, no longer trapped inside someone else's debt. She lifted her chin. "No, uncle," she said. "For the first time, I have behaved truthfully." Harold Whitfield looked at Anna as though truth were a breach of manners. He stood in the north study of Frostmere Hall, with snow melting from the hem of his coat, his gloves still buttoned, his mouth arranged into the thin patience he had used for years whenever he wished to make cruelty sound like instruction. "Truthfully," he repeated, a dramatic word for a girl who has spent 4 days under a stranger's roof and now imagines herself wise. Anna felt the insult strike old places inside her. The parlor at Whitfield House. The unpaid bills spread like accusations. Her aunt's silence. Harold's voice explaining that gratitude was a duty women should wear without complaint. For one moment, her hand tightened around her father's letter. Then she remembered Everett standing behind her, not speaking because she had asked him not to. She remembered Mrs. Briggs beside the ledger table. She remembered the Duchess's blue seal, the old receipts, the proof no one could frighten back into hiding. "I do not imagine it," Anna said. "I can read it." She placed the Duchess's acknowledgement on the desk before the solicitor. Harold's eyes flicked toward it, then away too quickly. Old family sentiment. Nothing more. The solicitor adjusted his spectacles. "It is a signed acknowledgement of a $10,000 private relief transfer from Thomas Whitfield to the Frost estate, witnessed and sealed by the late Duchess Frost." Harold gave a dry laugh. If such a thing were enforceable, it would have appeared in proper accounts. "It appeared in the North Archive," Anna said, "where you hoped no one would look." "I hoped," Harold snapped, then stopped. The room heard the unfinished confession. Everett did not move, but the air behind Anna seemed to sharpen. Harold recovered with effort. "I hoped my niece would not humiliate herself by clinging to dead men's generosity. Her father wasted money, as I always said. That does not erase the Whitfield household debt." "No," Anna answered, "but it reveals who spent honor first." Harold's face flushed. "You speak as if you understand business." "I understand being used as settlement for it." Mrs. Briggs lowered her eyes, but not before Anna saw pride there, small and fierce. The solicitor unfolded the agreement Harold had signed. "There are further concerns. The terms transferring Miss Whitfield as personal collateral are irregular and may expose the signer to legal review, particularly if coercion, misrepresentation, or concealment of counterclaim is established." Harold turned toward Everett then, abandoning the pretense that Anna was the one who mattered. "Your Grace, surely we can discuss this without servants and women turning old letters into spectacle." Anna felt the old pattern, speak past her, over her, around her, as if power were a room from which she could be politely removed. This time, Everett's voice came from behind her, calm and glacial. "You will address Miss Whitfield." Harold blinked. "I beg your pardon. You sold her name to my house. You will answer her when she speaks." The words entered Anna like warmth she had not asked for and therefore could accept. They did not take the moment from her. They returned it. She looked at Harold. "Did you know Frostmere owed my father?" Harold's jaw tightened. "Your father refused repayment." "That is not what I asked." "He was sentimental." "That is not what I asked." The repetition was quiet, but it closed around him more firmly than shouting could have. Harold looked toward the windows, where dawn had begun to pale the snow beyond the glass. "I knew there had been assistance between the houses. Nothing formal. You knew enough to forbid me from taking his papers." He said nothing. "You knew enough to hide the letter." "I protected the family from ruin." "No," Anna said. "You protected yourself from being revealed." The solicitor made a note. Harold saw it and lost another shade of composure. "This is absurd. She had shelter, food, a name because I allowed it. I was owed obedience." At that, Everett stepped forward, not between them, but beside the desk, his face colder than the frost on the windows. No man is owed a woman's life because he once gave her a room. Harold's mouth opened, then closed. The sentence did not merely rebuke him. It judged the entire philosophy by which he had lived. Everett turned to the solicitor. The agreement transferring Miss Whitfield to Frostmere is void. Record it. The solicitor nodded. Yes, Your Grace. All Whitfield claims against her labor, person, inheritance, or movement are rejected pending review. Yes, Your Grace. The Frost estate will file acknowledgment of the debt of honor owed to Thomas Whitfield, including restitution to his daughter for any benefit withheld through concealment. Anna looked at Everett then, startled despite herself. He did not look at her as if he had granted charity. He looked as if he had finally learned the arithmetic of shame. Harold stepped back. You would pay her? Everett's gaze returned to him. No. Frostmere will return what should never have been hidden. The difference mattered. Anna heard it. Harold did too, and hated it. This will ruin Whitfield House, he said. Anna looked at him across the desk, where her future had nearly been priced. Whitfield House was ruined when it decided I was easier to sell than the truth. The room fell silent. Not empty. Complete. Harold had no answer large enough to fill it. When he left Frostmere Hall, he carried no papers signed in victory, no promise of payment, no niece made small enough to manage. He left beneath the watch of the solicitor, Mrs. Briggs, and the Duke whose coldness had become something cleaner than mercy. Anna remained in the north study after the door closed, her father's letter still in her hand. She had imagined vindication would feel like triumph. Instead, it felt like standing after years of being leaned upon. Everett turned toward her. You spoke well. I spoke late. No, he said. They listened late. Her eyes lifted to his. The answer was not enough to heal anything, but it was true, and truth had become a kind of fire in that frozen house. Outside, dawn brightened the snow until Frostmere Hall looked less like a prison of ledgers and more like a place where debts could finally be named correctly. Anna folded the blue-sealed letter with care. Her father had given Frostmere mercy. Harold had given it fraud. Everett had given it law. And now, for the first time, Anna held something none of them could sign away. The authority to decide what her own life would cost her and what it would never cost again. After Harold Whitfield left Frostmere Hall, the house did not warm at once. Winter does not surrender because one lie is named. It withdraws by inches, from the edge of a window, from the top of a fieldstone wall, from the breath a person no longer holds when a familiar door opens. Anna Whitfield spent the rest of the morning in the north study while the solicitor copied the Duchess's acknowledgment, her father's letter, and every page that proved the debt had been carried backward. Mrs. Briggs remained beside her, placing each document in order with a reverence that made paper feel almost sacred. Duke Everett Frost did not sit behind the desk. He stood near the window, apart from the work, his hands clasped behind him, his reflection faint in the glass beside the white fields. Anna noticed that he no longer looked like the man who had first read her terms aloud. He was still cold, still restrained, still built from law and winter, but the cold had changed direction. It no longer pressed against her. It guarded the truth. By noon, the solicitor departed with sealed copies, and Mrs. Briggs withdrew to arrange a meal Anna did not think she could eat. The study grew quiet. Anna gathered her father's letter and the blue-sealed acknowledgment, then placed them inside the small leather folder Everett had given her without comment. This folder is too fine, she said. The papers deserve protection. Protection, she repeated, looking toward him. A word men use often when they have power over a woman. Everett accepted the rebuke without flinching. Then I will use another. Preservation. That is better. Not enough. No, the truth of it stood between them, neither cruel nor kind. Anna looked around the north study, at the ledgers, the fire, the black desk where she had once been measured as collateral. What happens now? She asked. Now the agreement is void. Your uncle's claims are under review. The Frost estate will acknowledge its debt to your father publicly and legally. Restitution will be transferred in your name. And me? Everett turned from the window. You are free to leave Frostmere whenever you wish. She had longed to hear those words. Yet when they came, they did not open the room as she expected. They revealed how much of her life had been spent imagining freedom only as distance from someone else's control. She could leave. She could stay until arrangements were made. She could go to Boston, Salem, Anywhere the blue-sealed letter and restitution allowed. Choice stood before her, vast and unfamiliar, like a snowy field with no footprints to follow. I should leave, she said. Everett's face remained still, but something behind his eyes lowered. Yes, if that is what you want. It is what is sensible. Sensible and wanted are not always the same. She almost smiled at the irony. You sound less like a ledger today. I have recently learned that ledgers can be incomplete. The small warmth vanished quickly, because the room still remembered what had brought her there. Anna touched the leather folder. I cannot remain in a house that accepted me as payment and pretend the apology has repaired the insult. I would never ask that. But you would ask something. He looked down, and for the first time since she had known him, the Frost Duke seemed unsure whether speech itself might trespass. Not today. The answer unsettled her more than a request would have. He had power enough to shape her future with money, title, and comfort, yet he stood withholding desire because honor required patience. That restraint felt like a door left open, not a hand on her back. Mrs. Briggs returned with a tray and stopped when she sensed the weight in the room. Forgive me. No, Anna said softly. Come in. The housekeeper placed the tray down and turned to Everett. The East guest suite is being prepared for Miss Whitfield until she decides her plans. Everett looked to Anna before answering. She heard the question in that glance and respected him for it. One night, Anna said, I will leave tomorrow after the county clerk receives the copies. As you wish, Everett replied. The phrase was simple. It gave nothing and took nothing. Yet it held. That evening, Anna walked alone through Frostmere Hall. No footman followed. No maid pretended to adjust lamps. The records library door stood open behind her. The North Archive, once locked, now breathed cold, clean air. She passed the marble hall, the staircase, the portraits of Frost ancestors, and reached the conservatory at the rear of the house, where glass walls looked out over the frozen lake. Moonlight covered everything in silver. On a table near the windows sat a vase of white winter roses, their petals perfect and scentless. Anna touched one and thought of Whitfield House, where beauty had survived only as pretense. Behind her, Everett's voice came quietly. My mother grew those. Anna turned. He stood at the conservatory entrance, not crossing the threshold. Mrs. Briggs told me your mother sealed the acknowledgement. She believed debts of honor should be preserved where pride could not edit them. She was wise. Wiser than her son. Anna looked at him for a long moment. You were allowed to say you were wrong without turning it into a monument. The faintest change touched his mouth, not a smile, but the possibility of one. Then I was wrong. Yes. I injured you with documents because I trusted documents more than people. Yes. And when you leave tomorrow, Frostmere will still owe you more than money. The moonlight lay between them, pale and exact. Anna did not soften the truth for him. It will. He bowed his head. Then I will spend what remains of my life making this house worthy of the debt it carries. She looked back at the frozen lake. Do not do it for me. No, his voice was low. For your father. For my mother. For the staff whose wages his mercy preserved. For the girl who arrived here as a line in an agreement and forced the house to remember she had a name. Anna's throat tightened. She hated that the words moved her. She hated more that they were true. I did not force you. You stood still long enough for truth to become unbearable. Outside, the moon shone on the snow with a silence almost tender. Anna held the leather folder against her side. Tomorrow she would leave Frostmere Hall as no one's collateral, no one's burden, no one's bargain. But tonight, standing among winter roses and glass, she understood that freedom was not always the act of walking away. Sometimes it was the power to decide whether staying one more moment belonged to fear or to herself. At dawn, Frostmere Hall looked less like a fortress than a confession waiting under snow. The sky had cleared in the night, leaving the world blue, white, and painfully still, with the frozen lake shining beyond the pines and the windows of the North Archive glowing faintly behind the frost. Anna Whitfield came down the main staircase carrying her small trunk in one hand and the leather folder in the other. Inside it rested her father's letter, the Duchess's acknowledgement, the copied receipts, and the first legal proof that her life had never belonged to the debt her uncle sold. Mrs. Briggs waited in the marble hall with a travel basket wrapped in linen. Bread, cheese, tea, and 2 oranges, she said, as if naming provisions could keep emotion in its proper place. The road to town is clear, and the driver has orders to stop wherever you request. Anna looked at the basket, then at the housekeeper's severe face. You are very kind for someone determined not to appear so. Mrs. Briggs sniffed. Appearances are unreliable. Eat the oranges before noon. Anna almost smiled, and the almost smile hurt because it belonged to a morning of departure. A week ago, she had entered Frostmere as collateral. Now she stood beneath its high ceiling with her name restored, her father honored, and a future returned to her hands so suddenly that she hardly knew how to hold it. The carriage waited outside near the front steps, dark against the snow. No chains. No witnesses pretending concern. No uncle with ink-dry lies. Only a door open to choice. Duke Everett Frost stood beside the entrance, dressed in black, pale in the dawn light, holding no paper, no ledger, no claim. That mattered. He had learned, at least, not to meet her with documents. The county clerk will send confirmation by tomorrow, he said. The restitution transfer will be placed in your name within the week. Mrs. Briggs has the address of a solicitor in Boston who will answer only to you. You arranged a great deal. I arranged what should have been arranged before you were brought here. That is not the same as undoing it. No, he accepted the correction without lowering his eyes. It is only the beginning of paying correctly. Anna looked past him toward the open door. The snow outside held the first gold of sunrise along its edges. I thought leaving would feel simpler. Freedom is not always simple when it arrives after fear. It asks where you wish to go before you remember how to want. The words were too accurate, and because they were accurate, she looked back at him. You speak as if you know that. I have lived most of my life inside rules I mistook for strength. His voice remained controlled, but not cold. Yesterday, I discovered they were easier than mercy. Mrs. Briggs turned away under the pretense of checking the basket cloth. Anna descended the last step. Your Grace. Everett, he said quietly, then seemed to regret the presumption. Forgive me. No, Anna said. Not yet. But I heard you. That was all she could give, and he received it as if it were more generous than forgiveness given too quickly. He opened the front door himself. The cold air entered with the scent of pine, snow, and morning. Anna stepped onto the stone landing. Her trunk was placed in the carriage. The driver bowed and waited. She reached for the carriage handle, and that was when Everett spoke again. Anna. She turned. He had followed her only as far as the top step, leaving the distance between them clear, visible, honorable. There is one thing I have not done. Her fingers tightened around the folder. What is that? He came down slowly, not toward the carriage, but toward the snow-covered ground beside the steps. Then, before Mrs. Briggs, the driver, the pale windows, the frozen lake, and the waking house that had once measured her as debt, Duke Everett Frost lowered himself to one knee in the snow. Anna's breath caught. He did not reach for her hand. He did not offer a ring. He did not dress apology as romance. He simply knelt, placing the power that had once stood above her where it could no longer tower. Your father saved this house, he said, his voice low enough for dignity and clear enough for witness. You saved what was left of its honor. I accepted you under false terms because I trusted signatures more than suffering. I let law stand where conscience should have stood. No apology can make that clean, but I give it anyway, without asking what it purchases. Snow clung to the dark fabric at his knee. The image struck Anna with a force no declaration could have carried. This was not a man begging to possess her. This was a duke teaching his own pride the shape of humility. Stand up, she whispered. Not until you know this, he said. Frostmere owes you truth, restitution, and safety should you ever need it. I owe you more personally. The respect I withheld at the door, the belief I should have offered before proof, and the patience not to turn my remorse into a burden you must comfort. The quiet became immense. Anna felt tears rise, not for Harold, not for the lost years, not even for the insult that had brought her there, but for the strange mercy of being apologized to without being asked to heal the person who had wounded her. I am still angry, she said. You should be. I may leave and never answer a letter from Frostmere. Yes. I may come back only to inspect the accounts in my father's name. The archive will open for you. I may need time before I know whether I wish to see you as anything but the man who read my debt aloud. The words trembled, but they did not break. Everett bowed his head where he knelt. Then time will be yours. Anna looked at the carriage, at the open road, At Mrs. Briggs watching with wet eyes she would deny until her last breath. Then she looked at the house behind them. Frostmere Hall, still cold, still imperfect, but no longer innocent in its own mind. She stepped down one stair and held out the blue-sealed letter. Everett looked up. "Keep the copy," she said. "The original stays with me." "As it should. But the promise inside it belongs to both houses." "Yes. Then Frostmere will remember my father publicly every winter. Every winter. And the servants whose wages he preserved? Their descendants, if they remain, will be told. Those who do not remain will be found, if records allow." Anna studied him, searching for performance. She found restraint, shame, and the beginning of a discipline that might one day become goodness if watched carefully enough. "Then stand," she said. This time he obeyed. She did not offer him her hand. She was not ready. Instead, she held the folder against her chest and turned toward the carriage. At the door, she paused. "I will go to town today." Everett nodded once. "Yes. I will meet the solicitor myself." "Yes. And after that, I may return for the archive." His breath changed, barely visible in the cold. "Whenever you choose." Anna stepped into the carriage, then looked back through the open door. "Not because I owe Frostmere. No, because I decide." Everett's face, pale in the winter dawn, softened by something too quiet to be hope and too honest to be pride. "Because you decide." The carriage carried her down the white drive as the sun lifted over the ridge. Frostmere Hall receded behind her, no longer a prison, not yet a home, but a place where a ledger had been broken open and rewritten by truth. In the weeks that followed, Anna did return, first for the archive, then for the winter memorial to her father, then for the accounts that bore her name as creditor instead of collateral. She did not forgive quickly. Everett did not ask. He opened records, repaid wages, wrote public acknowledgments, and learned that remorse without patience is only another form of selfishness. By spring, the frozen lake began to loosen at the edges. Anna stood beside it one morning with the blue-sealed letter in her pocket, and Everett several steps away, watching the thaw without speaking. Between them lay no vow, no claim, no bargain. Only truth, choice, and the difficult mercy of time. Some debts are not paid in gold, but in the humility of powerful men learning to kneel before the truth, and some women are not saved by being claimed, but by receiving back the name no one had the right to sell.